Well, so for more on the NPA's extradition woes, we are joined in studio by the Organisation on Doing Tax Abuses CEO Wayne Duvenage, while we also are joined by legal expert Elton Hart, who is joining us via video link. Also joining us is a former Interpol ambassador, Mr. Andy Magashule, on our virtual platform as well. We're keen to hear your thoughts on this, certainly as we watch some of the extradition woes, and I'll go down the list, and there are so many of these examples. You just think about the court challenge that is soon to play out as well, with the likes of Nandi Pamakutumana, who's heading all the way to the Concourt to argue how she was brought into the country. There is the issue of challenges that we have with bringing Shepherd Bushiri back to South Africa to face his charges, and the list does go on. But as we look at all of these examples, we're keen to hear from you, the viewer, what this does to the public confidence in the ability of authorities, and certainly the NPA, perhaps even the Ministry of Justice, in bringing criminals to book in the country. Send us a WhatsApp on 072 110 5584 or give us a call on 010 594 6010. Wayne, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
Really good to have you with us. So this is interesting because you've got tears of joy that were seen yesterday in the Bloemfontein High Court with Moroadi Cholota obviously feeling some sense of relief with the court ruling that her extradition from the US was not lawful. And again, you hear legal experts saying that this has a massive impact on the trial and the prosecution of the matter moving forward. Can we talk a little bit about what all of this does for confidence in the NPA, but also what all of this is costing us? I think an important issue.
Yeah, it certainly does shatter the confidence, but this has been going on for some time. A lot of cases from the Zondo Commission have just not materialized. I remember also the botched matter to extradite the Guptas from Dubai, where everything was supposed to be going according to plan, and then it went awry. We still don't even know exactly why, but I guess this type of stuff was coming into play as well. So yeah, the NPA should have known. This is basic administrative processes that they're not even paying attention to. And we've seen botched cases. We've seen the recent one in the Omotoso case down in the Eastern Cape, and the Nulane case, so many others. And we start to ask ourselves, what is actually going on here? And I think it's a multifaceted. It's a leadership issue, it's a capacity issue, and there's political interference. As far as we're concerned, I think some cases just aren't going anywhere because they're not going to. Some people are untouchable. But it doesn't give us a lot of confidence in the NPA and the investigating directorate, who government have been very, very slow to give them the powers that they need, the budgets that they need. So if everything underlying all of this has to come from the leadership, right at the top, not only the minister but the president, does not seem to be a serious political will to tackle crime and corruption in this country. And the various systems are working in silos. The systems aren't in place to, you should be working digitally by now, and yet paper is flowing and getting lost. As you know, you hear it often, files go missing. It's shocking, quite frankly, and it's not instilling any confidence in the public in the criminal justice system. Yeah,
let's stay with the issue of confidence. Mr. Magashule, I'll bring you in just as a former Interpol ambassador. Perhaps you can give us, I suppose, the bird's eye view, right? When you have two accused in the matter of AKA and Tebello Tibbs Motswane, who were shot on Florida Road in KZN, and they still have not been brought into the country to face trial. You have a Shepherd Bushiri who is still in Malawi, unable to be brought to South Africa. Again, the Guptas are still in the UAE. Just what it says to, I suppose, the strength of South African authorities from an international point of view.
It talks about the systemic weaknesses that we have experienced, Naledi, throughout the list that you have just belted out, and the issues addressed by Wayne. And good evening to you, Wayne, and Elton on the other side. The second point is, when you have systemic weaknesses, you have systematic weaknesses, and the whole principle falls apart of trust deficit and confidence in the systems worldwide. Naleli, why do we have all the criminals from all parts of the world flocking into South Africa, using South Africa as a springboard into Africa and many parts of the world? It is precisely because there are systemic weaknesses that create what you and I would call a backdoor to the security systems, safety systems, law enforcement systems. But let me hasten to say, having it set on the work stream that talks about enhancing law enforcement agencies from the perspective of the about to be established Office of Public Integrity, proposed by your National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council. I am confident that the systemic weaknesses that we hammered on this last week, Monday at OR Tambo Garden Court, I am sure government is ready to listen and to tighten those loopholes so that that international stature of South Africa and international integrity, systems integrity is implemented and get respect.
Yeah. Well, as a result of the matter coming out of the Bloemfontein High Court, where it involves Moroadi Cholota, the former PA of Ace Magashule, you now have the Justice Minister, Mmamoloko Kubayi, who said to the NPA, bring me all of those extradition matters that you are dealing with that have not been signed and authorized by the administration prior to hers. And perhaps that it's an opportunity now, Elton, for us to actually talk about the complexity of extradition processes for the South African really to understand just how difficult this is, but also the integral role of the minister and how we got it wrong in the Bloemfontein High Court.
Naledi, and also evening to all the other guests. For me, it's straightforward and it's actually simple. If you are legally trained, you should actually know these things, that treaties is signed between governments. It's not between the prosecuting authorities in countries. So nowhere do you have locus standi as a prosecuting authority, either in America or South Africa in the Cholota case. It's between governments. So these two ministers or the presidents that signed the treaty, they are the delegated persons who has powers in terms of that treaty. And it's stipulated clear in the treaty that the minister is the one that's asking these things. And for me, the NPA to say that we didn't know, they then dealt with the Schultz case where the SCA was instructive, prescriptive to say, this is how I want you guys to deal with this. So at some stage, they knew already that this is coming. It's not something that's blindsiding them. And they should not have been blindsided, because they need to have a specialized unit within the NPA to say, listen here, this is the unit that will deal with extraditions. And we know with extraditions, there's diplomatic channels that's involved. Because you are going to take somebody from a sovereign state, bringing them to another country. So you need to follow the diplomatic channels. It's not a court order in South Africa that you can enforce in another country, because then it's extraterritorial. You don't have that powers. So that they should know even by just law 101. So for me, it's inexcusable what rookie mistake they made. But the mistake has been made now. And it's for us to, or maybe for the South African public to take note to say, this is what needs to happen, because here it's taxpayers' money that was actually wasted to actually Hollywood style bring Cholota back to South Africa, because our justice system or the crime prevention agencies wanted to show muscle, to show this is how we roll, but they rolled in the wrong direction in this case. And the mere fact, and this thing has a further implication for this asbestos case, because remember, Cholota, when they approached her in the United States, they wanted to make her what we call a 205 witness, which means she was sitting with information that they needed in order to have a successful conviction. Now, with her out of the picture, it means the asbestos case already, we can say, it's going down the drain. That's how I see it from my perspective.
So you think that this is going to have deeply impact the asbestos trial, and the likelihood of the NPA having success slim at this point, Elton?
100%, because if you remember what happened in the Jocelyn Smith trial, You know that one lady that turned as a 205 state witness and actually testified against her friends?
Right.
And that helped Judge Erasmus to actually come to the conclusion that Kelly and these other guys were involved in the human traffic case. Similar, they wanted to have Moroadi Cholota to be that type of witness for them so that they can actually get a hold of these other 17 and actually convict them. But without her testimony or without her evidence, they cannot go after these 17 successfully. That's how I view it. That's how I see it. And hence, their tapes that they had the interviews with, that we hear in the media that is being talked about, but they say the tapes was not working. That could have been the discussion, and now Cholota then said, I'm not going to implicate people, and hence they charged her. But now they made that blunder. Now she's not going to help them at all.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make their case more difficult to prove against the 17 that's currently in the dock.
Alton makes the point there around the Hollywood style in which there's the words, in fact, that were used by Cholota's family as well, and how Moroadi Cholota was brought back into the country, all for us to get to this point. Hard then not to think about Nandi Pamakotumana, the jet sent to collect them from Tanzania. If she is successful in the Crown Court, are all of those costs for nil? We're taking your thoughts on the other side of this short break. Send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We continue to look at some of the National Prosecution Authority's extradition woes, big cases that continue to leave us scratching our heads as to what exactly is going on with some of them. This is coming out of in the Bloemfontein High Court, Moroadi Cholota receiving that ruling that says that her extradition from the US back to South Africa was unlawful. So let's look at some of the other big cases when you've got the Justice Minister who said to the NPA, bring all of those extradition matters to my table. Let me see what needs my immediate attention, and giving them just 2 weeks, in fact, to respond to her. But we are taking your WhatsApps on 072-110-5584. Let's take a look at some of those messages. And the one that says the NPA called for judges outside the Free State to hear the asbestos case, but they were vilified. I think they're exonerated, South Africa. Okay. Anonymous, thank you so much for that. Taskungo says, I think that means Shamila Batoi of the NDPP must resign with immediate effect. Ever since she became the national director, she's been losing every case. Not a lot of confidence then in the NDPP. Taskungo, thank you so much for that. Mr. Lettuce Matebula says, there are so many things which are not going well at the NPA. It's not only the extradition issues, but many cases in which they failed to get conviction while evidence was there, but only due to their incompetence. We need a commission of inquiry at the NPA on the state of affairs there. Things are out of hand. All right, thanks for that. Anonymous says, I lost trust in our justice system. The Senzo Miwe case has been dragging for many years. They can't make a simple arrest. We'll take calls as well on 010-594-6010. We haven't talked so much about what this continues to cost the taxpayer. Can we get into that? Especially when you do have, and again, I mentioned this before the break, the big Hollywood style returning of this individual to South Africa. I mean, when Moroadi was brought in, so much attention. Nandi Pamakutumana, Alang Thabo Bester, so much public, such a big public spectacle, and then the resources that are put into bringing these people back home.
Yeah, I think they do go a little bit overboard and make a song and dance of it, and then to only have these outcomes just makes matters worse. I think the costs of those fetching people is a concern, and we need to look at that and how they're doing it. I mean, we've even seen it internally with the Sarah Berger case, where private jets were hired and Hollywood style fetching them from the Western Cape. They were doing corruption matters on the Fort Hare University issue, and also just bullying and absolutely overreach when it comes to how the prosecuting authorities handle that one. So it's becoming an endemic problem, one would start to get the feeling of. And you can see from the WhatsApps, people are just losing faith and confidence. But as I said earlier, this is across the board. I mean, if you just go and have a look at the courts in Joburg and how they've deteriorated, how people feel unsafe just working there and getting to and from work, the lawyers and so forth. and how the systems that we have that are integrated between Hawks, between the police, between the NPA, that are broken, and just data and the ability to share information, the lack of the forensic investigation skills. It just goes on and on and on. And you know, we had a think tank session a couple of days ago with people inside South Africa, but how do we get this economy sorted out? And there are a number of issues that need to be in place. One of them, and it is the most important one, is an effective criminal justice system. People don't want to invest in South Africa. People don't want to come here when there's this uncertainty around how crime and corruption is dealt with. And unless we get this right, unless the president and the minister and others take this seriously, we're never going to fight this issue. And, you know, the syndicates that are operating within government departments that are escaping through this illicit trade in tobacco and alcohol and that, we just can't get on top of it. So we start losing tax revenues. It has such a multiple knock-on effect if we just do not fix this problem.
Yeah. As we look inward, of course, we need to analyze and criticize ourselves as a country, but we also need to look at factors that perhaps influences that may very well not be in our control. Mr. Magashule, you can assist us with this one. I mean, just, in fact, just today, this hitting the news cycle, Malawian preacher, Shepherd Bushiri, arguing that the chief resident magistrate in Malawi committed legal errors when she ordered their extradition. I mean, that's one example of how also, to some extent, we are at the peril of what happens with that country that we may very well have a treaty with. In the case of the Gupta brothers, lots of uncertainty still, but there was a sense that we had approved papers for extradition with the UAE, but then a snag along the way where there were reports of the UAE then dealing with an issue around jurisdiction, also a matter around them needing to charge Atul and Rajesh too, making our extradition difficult. So let's talk a bit about that, around how, to some extent, a lot of it is out of our control, Mr. Magashule.
Naledi, I spoke about systemic weaknesses. You find a situation that Elchin has clearly painted on this canvas, which is the subject that we are discussing. As long as the minister is not the one who has requested, and it's the NPA that does that, it messes up Act 67 of 1962, the Extradition Act 67 of 1962. That speaks on these issues. These issues would be your legal cooperation or international cooperation. Forgive me for that. International cooperation balanced against constitutional safeguards. If there is that balance, but the act is violated by these instruments, amongst others being the NPA, requesting or submitting a request for extradition, which does not go as per the prescripts of the act that says the minister, your channels, your government channels, the minister is the one, your diplomatic channels. The minister is the one who's supposed to request that. Bushiri exploited that gap from a strategy point of view. Now, lady, you know, in my other life, I'm a security strategist. So Bushiri exploited that gap effectively to say this, when it came from South Africa, did not go through to the right channels. It went to the police without having it gone to the minister. And the court rejected that extradition, if you remember the mess up of the Bushiri matter. So long story short, now, Lady Elton and Wayne, we are going to be facing an opposition of all extradition requests based on these mistakes that we have committed. To our adversaries, this is an opportunity that they will not lose in order for them not to come to South Africa. The Payne UK case is a typical example where the court said, no, Payne is not coming to South Africa. So long story short, all extradition requests submitted are going to be challenged.
I want to take calls as we continue to analyze this issue. We're speaking now to Jamara in Johannesburg. Jamara, good evening. Thank you for calling in.
A very good evening and to your guests by the studio. And my question is based on one of your guests who's online there.
Sure. When
he said the extradition based on the outcome of the court to say it is unlawful. However, he indicated that this means that Cholota will be a free lady out of the court and he won't be able to be called again to come and give evidence because there is an NPA called her. They believe that she have gotten evidence to the case of asbestos and stuff like that, as she was a PA to the former Premier of Free State. So my question is based on the fact that how does he came forth and said to us as a nation to say that she won't be able to appear again in court? In which basis and on which constitutional basis for the fact that now she's acquitted and she won't be a witness again? And this, it will be causing a lot of confusion based on the court of law for the fact of taking former Premier to the court and whereas the witness is not there. So that is my question to one of your guests who's online there.
Yeah, that's for Elton. Jamara, thank you so much for that. So Jamara really wanting to know the inner workings of it here, Elton, and perhaps you can help us. So when we say that Cholota's exclusion from the asbestos case weakens the case, perhaps the real way to ask it, another way to ask it is the opportunities that are available for her to be able to give some sort of contribution to the matter. Jamara asking, how is it that you're able to come to that conclusion that she will not be part of this process at all? And maybe just as we respond to that, talk to us about the opportunities that are available for the NPA. They have said that they would like to appeal this ruling, the likelihood that they could be successful.
I think Jamara most probably misheard what I said, in that I said that they first tried to make her a 205 witness, and thereafter it seems like she didn't want to cooperate, and then they charged her. Now the court has found that she was brought here unlawfully, which means then the court doesn't have jurisdiction over her currently. But what I'm not saying is that the charges that the NPA preferred against her, their charges does not disappear.
Yeah.
It can still come up, and now I'm going to give advice to the NPA. They can ask for separation of her trial from this trial. They can do that. They can appeal the judgment that was given by Phillip Loubser. There is a couple of things that the NPA can do, but that's up to them how to go about that. But I'm saying also, being put through this whole process of the extradition and everything, I think now Cholota would be much more hostile towards the NPA and assisting them with convicting these 17 accused persons. They can subpoena her and declare a hostile witness in court. They can do that. That's an option. But I don't know if it's going to help their case in convicting these 17 accused. And that is what I'm saying. Okay. So maybe Jamal misread what I was trying to convey.
Yeah, and I want to come back to you, but I do want to highlight this, that there's a statement, of course, that came out today from the National Prosecuting Authority that reads that media reports that Loubser made adverse findings of unethical conduct on the part of the state when he delivered judgment in the trial within the trial yesterday are patently untrue, saying that media houses are reporting that the judge had made findings of misrepresentation during the submission of an extradition application. So essentially wanting to clarify that the NPA has full confidence in the prosecution team as they have conducted themselves professionally throughout the case in line with our values, integrity and professionalism. So I just wanted to bring that in as it brings in the latest. Elton, can we go back to Nandi Pamakutumana, if you'll allow me? And you can comment on the statement if you'd like, that's fine. But Nandi Pamakutumana, heading to the Concourt, that we find out this week as well. Heading to the Constitutional Court to challenge how she was brought back into the country. I mean, she's taking it all the way. Could she be successful, Elton?
I think she could be successful. And it was the same judge, Judge Phillip Loubser, that actually made that judgment to say that her deportation was this, let me say, how she was brought back. That bringing back process of her from Tanzania to South Africa, it was a disguised extradition. So they made it look like a deportation, but it was actually an extradition, because deportation would entail a different process where a country, and there's no request, a country sort of have say, you are an illegal alien, we don't want you in our country, and they take you to the closest border, they put you outside their country, that's being deported. So you can't be, but now here we had a jet coming out of South Africa, and then it is authorities there in Tanzania that actually has her, and they hand her over to South African authorities. As much as they say there was no handover and there was no arrest, why was that plane there with police officers from South Africa who does not have jurisdiction there, and all other officials from different departments like correctional services who does not have jurisdiction, which is extraterritorial for them because they don't have jurisdiction there. They were sent there. Then it would have meant that they should have put her outside the borders of Tanzania and say, we are deporting you outside our country, so you can go wherever you are, just not back in our country. That is for me deportation. So I think she has a good chance if the court really applies the extradition laws according to what Ntate Mashayile was actually saying, that act specifically to say what is an extradition and what. But I think Judge Loubser helped the Constitutional Court already to make a fact finding to say this was a disguised extradition. And I think that is where the battle is. Although the SCA have said that, I think the Constitutional Court might, but also it's a 50-50, but I think there's a chance of success there.
Yeah, so much interest in some of these cases. Okay, so we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get recommendations. What now? What do we do to get things right, especially recommendations perhaps for the Justice Minister who is taking some of these matters to her own desk. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. We talk extraditions and the National Prosecuting Authority as we wrap up our discussion with our panelists. And just as we close off, I think let's go around the room and get really recommendations. If you were speaking directly to the Justice Minister at the moment, perhaps even the NPA, what would those words be, Mr. Mashayile? For closing thoughts from you.
One, it is the correct move that the minister has gone to the files, to file 13, to look at the errors that were committed so that in her next move, she is not moving herself into a checkmate position. We have been checkmated before, and for us to be able to get out of that checkmate situation, she must study all of those errors so that she prepares or she looks for strategic back doors that are opened that she can then reuse to reapply or to resubmit in the event where courts and decisions and precedents that have been set would allow her to do that. Once again, lady, legal cooperation cannot be used to trump constitutional safeguard in the same act, in the same spirit, violates the Extradition Act.
Yeah. Elton, I'll get to you in a moment. Let's just take one caller quickly. Ronald is in Elim. Ronald, good evening. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, evening. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Thanks for calling. Talk to us.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
The main issue that led to the NPA losing the cases.
Ronald, are you there?
I'm waiting for you.
No, I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm saying I'll start again.
Yes.
The NPA, they're losing the cases because they're not working accordingly. They're just taking instruction, wrong instruction from the ruling party, targeting other people.
So you think so the point that you're making is you think there's political interference, Ronald?
Hello?
Yes, Ronald. Okay, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much. I think your point certainly is made. We appreciate it. I think and that's also a public perception that might very well be out there, as we can hear from a caller like Ronald Alton. But just as we close off, the minister taking on this mammoth task of saying, we'll bring all of these extradition requests, so let's look at them. Call to action, not just to her, but certainly to the NPA.
For me, it's simple. The NPA must have a dedicated unit with people with the right expertise on laws on extradition, knowing extradition treaties, and have that unit focuses on all the cases that have public interest where we need to get people back in the country to stand trial. Then they need to backtrack and say, okay, what should be done in each of the different cases? And once they prepare all their documents, now they have to send it through the diplomatic channels to make sure that the requesting state, which is us, and the requested state, wherever the Guptas, the Bushiris, whoever we're still looking for around the world, are sitting, are on the same page, that according to the diplomatic channels, all protocols and processes has been observed.
Yeah.
Thereafter, we need to then double check in terms of law. Are we good? The charges that is preferred against these individuals, is it extraditable offenses or not? And then thereafter, we send it through. Make sure that you get that unit to look at it, and that unit must work close because if the minister brings all these things to our office, who in that minister's office is really legally trained on extradition? It doesn't help bringing just things to your office. Then you're going to have another group of politicians looking at law and not having the expertise. Then it's not really going to help you.
Yeah.
So as much as she wants to call action, you cannot call action for football match with rugby players.
Quite the analogy. Thanks for that, Elton. Wayne, your final thoughts? And just as you give us some of those, call to action, if you will. But are you confident that the minister will get this across the line?
Well, I hope so. You know, she's come in December last year. I think you've also got to look at her and say, when you came in, were you not supposed to, at least your advisors telling you, because she doesn't come from this legal background, to start looking at what loopholes are there? She should have known, I think, that she also needed to be proactive and play a role. But I think, to Elton's point, we need to go further. This specialization, having the right people in the right spaces to do this work, is so important. So on extradition is absolutely valid, but then even internally, when you get these complex cases, the cases that we've botched, if I was the head of NPA, I'd make sure that I had the top teams on the top 50 cases, and certainly the big state capture ones, which we're waiting for. People are walking the streets that should be in jail by now, as far as we're concerned, to make sure that everything's in place, that there are going to be no more botched cases. And personally, handling those with the specialized forensics and prosecuting specialists. It doesn't seem to be happening. We're just dropping the ball all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a leadership issue. And, you know, Shamila's time is coming up in the next year, I think. I'm hoping that the minister now is planning who is the courageous, absolutely best person for this job going forward. And maybe we can start that person in that role sooner rather than later.
Perhaps that's a discussion we have sometime on the show as well, an important one. One more caller. Let's take one. Deborah is in Soweto. Deborah, good evening.
Hi, good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for calling, Deborah. Talk to us.
Yeah, I just need to find out, ma'am. In Makutumani's case, because I had a gentleman saying in her extradition case, chances are that she might be out. But now, my question is, now that she was harboring a criminal, would that case be taken off also?
Yeah, that is a brilliant question, and this is why this conversation is so difficult to wrap up, because there are so many layers. Elton, as quickly as you can. Yeah.
I will quickly remember, if he's saying harboring Tabu Bester, as I said, the fact that your extradition is unlawful doesn't make the charges to disappear.
Yes.
The charges will still be there. It just means that at this point in time, the court doesn't have jurisdiction over the person.
Okay.
But at the later stage, because the NPA can then reinstitute charges against that person.
Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
And we're
But
following
not
all
now.
of these stories, so don't worry. Here on Channel 405, we'll keep you updated, and that's where I need to wrap things up. But thank you so much to our panelists, Mr. Andy Mashile, who is, of course, a former Interpol ambassador, also Elton Hart, who is a legal expert, and in studio with us, Mr. Wayne Duvenage, who is the CEO of Outer. And a great discussion, and we can certainly continue it on Twitter, @Newzroom 405. Let's take a break. We've got your headlines at the top of the hour.